learn from my mistakes, don't repeat them. So I have a much better, more deliberate plan for people, and it's usually like customized to their situation. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because you'll have some individuals that are happy, with their job and their profession. They just want to scratch that itch outside the day job or build up kind of a second stream of income. So the funny thing was, I remember having some extension or browser extension or some web app that you plugged in a date and it was like a countdown backwards, right? So I remember like having this date that was several months out of like, okay, I'm going to quit at this time, right? And I remember kind of every day going to my workstation and looking at that date and being like, okay, we're getting closer. And that's kind of what gave me hope and got me continue to go there. We built it in such a way that it was like all of our payments were like our contracts were, using like Zapier, right? We had automations for the web forms for the contracts to be filled out, to be docu-signed, and then the payments were auto drafted, right, with QuickBooks. So the reality was I kind of got the business running so smooth. By the time I hit the date, you're like, why would it felt silly. Why would I quit? Like, I'm not working as hard as I was the first couple of years, because there was a couple of years of overlap. So I had to convince myself. So I'm like, maybe I'll stick around a while. So I actually stayed probably 6 months longer than I need to. And then I just had one of those moments in a meeting where I'm like, okay, time to pack up. So for me, it was a situation where, yeah, I got up midday, grabbed my stuff, walked out, and was just done. And now, yeah, it was a beautiful day, right? It was a beautiful day.
What did your coworkers say? Your friends, like, were they like, what was their reaction?
It was kind of a, office space moment where about 3 days later, a manager had called and, it said, hey, are you, what's going on? Are you coming back? And you
No.
just, no, we had built this thing up with the intention of going full time. Yeah, and finally got there. And then, I probably took the foot off the gas for the first year I was full time. And I think that was just kind of recharge and spend a lot of family time after years of clocking a lot of hours. But after about 10 months or a year, I got re-energized to, have another surge and grow the business again, after taking a little well-deserved break, I guess.
So it sounds like you kind of stayed in your job for probably longer than, well, you could have left earlier. So
Yeah.
realistically, you're working with a number of people as well. Like, how
Yeah.
long does it take realistically to, generate whatever, $7,000-10,000 per month?
Yeah, well, I approach it different with clients now with the beauty of hindsight, right? Where I wouldn't actually have people follow my path.
Me too. Me too. I'm like the crash test dummy of like apparently everything. So,
don't you
uh,
feel like, yeah, you have a better
yeah,
way? You say like, learn from my
absolutely.
mistakes, don't repeat them. So I have a much better, more deliberate plan for people, and it's usually like customized to their situation. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Because you'll have some individuals that are happy, with their job and their profession. They just want to scratch that itch outside the day job or build up kind of a second stream of income. So their plan looks a little different than the person that says, hey, this job's soul crushing, get me out of it as quick as I can. So we'll kind of build a customized plan, but usually I just start with very much just start with their what they need annually and work backwards. And we generally say, how are we going to collect that in what increments, right? Are we going to do one or two really big flips a year? Or are we going to try to break this up so we're doing one a month and you get that over 12 flips?
Mhm.
So that's usually where I start is, what fits you and how much time do you have to input in the business? Because you're really only limited by your inputs, right? So if somebody says, hey, I can only throw 10 hours a week at this, it looks a little different, for the dad of four that's strapped for time and only can give the business 10 hours a week than the single guy who says, hey man, I'll throw 35 hours a week at this, right? They have all that extra time. So for them, we can build a different plan. So yeah, it's very customized. I try to build it very customized and intentional, knowing that not everybody has the same amount of time, and also knowing, being a dad, I have three boys, all three boys are in two sports. So I understand those time limitations, so I might help somebody build their business model a little differently than the single guy who's got nothing but time to throw at the business. But typically within a year, I feel like you can get that income replaced. And then I'm a fan of overlap. I really am, of rather than somebody leaving too early and having to return to the workforce, I would prefer to kind of, embrace that suck and, endure as much overlap as you can. Well, you kind of stack as much cash as you can on the side because when you get when you become an entrepreneur, it's a change when it's a side hustle and it's a second income versus when it's your primary income and you're cannibalizing the business, paying yourself, right? It's a different ball game. So I like people to have more set aside than they need, whether it's kind of mountains of cash or streams of recurring note income. I would prefer that people build it up beyond what they think they need before they quit their job.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see when people quit. Some people burn the boats before they even got started, and then other people stay in their job way too long. And it's interesting just kind of seeing. You're right. There's not a single size fits all. I want to talk to you about threats and opportunities. We're obviously in interesting, challenging times, and a lot of people are struggling. And there's also a lot of people argue a lot of opportunity. Where do you see the threats in land flipping, and then where do you see the opportunities?
Well, I feel like the most immediate threat to not just land, but almost all real estate investors is interest rates. Interest rates just have such a significant impact on everybody's, behavior, right? And buying and activity. So for us, like some of our infill lots, we were riding a really high wave, when people were buying lots and builders were building or people were building a second home. When the interest rate was low enough, they could get a construction loan immediately, right? When rates went up, the builders obviously pumped their brakes, if not paused totally. Okay. So that slowed down our kind of infill lot flipping side of the business. And what we did at that time is we kind of leaned into the rural vacant land and the seller financing. And the silver lining of rates going up is when you're the lender, you're the bank, right? We're originating notes. People were beating us up on interest rates the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? Well, all of a sudden, when rates go up and you're the one originating notes, it means instead of getting 8.9%, you're now getting 10.9 or 11.9 on the notes you create, right? So for us right now, it is a really good time for us to originate notes, with the current interest rate and lean more in to the rural vacant land because it's kind of more sustainable and less volatile. The residential infill lots are very cyclical, and tied to the interest rates in the home building industry. So for us, we don't do one or the other because when you're all in on one, you can be real vulnerable. That's kind of the threat. So we look at it like having two different products, in our business, and depending on what the market's doing, we lean more into one, than the other. Opportunities. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity with subdividing. You hinted on developing, things like that. The larger projects, and that most individuals that are familiar with land or land flipping kind of come in through a guru, through a $97 course or something, right? Most people are kind of immediately starting out with the very, very cheap stuff, meaning like auction lots, you know what I'm saying? Like Michael, like $10,000-$20,000 properties. So a lot of the activity is at a very low price point. The opportunity, and this is when we got outside money and we could start going after more expensive stuff. We realized these individuals received way less direct mail, way less calls, texts, letters. So we realized there's actually opportunity at a higher value. And the way it was initially presented to us was that this is kind of an inefficient market at the below 30,000 price point because no agents want to take a land listing worth $20,000. There's not enough commission. So that's the way it was presented to us, and that's the way that worked for us because we had limited means. But when we started bringing in outside capital and going after $150,000, $250,000, lots, we realized that land was an inefficient market at almost every level. We even realized that having investors in our network who do this model with ranches, meaning like a couple $1 million ranches in Texas. You might buy for under market value and then subdivide and sell off as ranchettes. So that really opened my eyes to realize that there's opportunity in land as an efficient market, at not just the 3,000 price point, 30,000, 300,000, but up to the 3 million, meaning just there's a lot of opportunity if you have enough capital, and enough experience to take down and willing to take the risk to go after bigger deals. There's a lot of opportunity in the bigger deals, and it's a space that not a lot of investors are playing in. So I think that's where our next opportunity is as we shift is just, less transactions per year, bigger projects, more revenue per transaction, maybe working with more outside capital versus using our own capital. I think that's where the opportunity is for us personally.